I see you.
Welcome back, Planeswalkers, to today's video where we take a look at Sauron, the Dark Lord. Morgoth's apprentice from Lord of the Rings, the new set that just came out in Magic, and he is finally here, and he is an amazing card. Very powerful, definitely looking to be arch enemy, I think, at the table. And if you're anything like me, I love being arch enemy. So I think Sauron is definitely going to get that done for us. He is a Grixis and 3 colorless mana, 7/6 Avatar Horror legendary creature with Ward, a very strong ward too, albeit. Sacrifice a legendary artifact or a legendary creature. No sacrificing tokens to target him. And then whenever an opponent casts a spell, we amass 1 orc, so we're making tokens. And then when we swing with our token and it deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts us. And the ring does a whole bunch of different things, and it is a little bit confusing. It works like a dungeon with an emblem. So I'm going to put that up on the screen so you can kind of look at it, but I definitely encourage you to read through it and kind of just look up any rulings that you need to for your deck. And then he has another ability, whenever the ring tempts us, we discard our hand and we can draw 4 cards. So very strong, a lot of different things we can do with him. He makes tokens, he has a lot of card draw with him, right, and discard. So you could reanimate with him, which would be pretty easy to do, or you could do him kind of play him like he is in the movie as a supervillain, right? He is the big bad, or well, he's just under the big bad if you know the lore. Morgoth is technically the really bad, but we won't get into that. Anyway, so I made the deck list as an aristocrat deck that does play some thematic cards, because I think if you're playing a card like Sauron, you definitely need to be playing some thematic cards. The One Ring needs to be in the deck. I think it's sacrilegious if you don't put the One Ring in a Sauron deck. So I do play some thematic cards. I don't play them all. The Ring Wraiths, they're pretty bad. I didn't put all of them in it. I do play one of the Witch King printings. And I think you guys are going to enjoy this deck list. If you want to be that arch enemy, like I said, you want to kind of put people under your thumb and press down, because that's what this deck is aiming to do. And let's get into it. We'll start things off with my theme lands. These are lands that I think just go in the deck because they make sense with Sauron. We have Mount Doom, which is a board wipe late game, and it's a pinger, the Black Gate, that lets us basically make one of our creatures unblockable. And then we have Barad-dûr, which makes us more mass tokens, Rivendell for the Scry, and the Mines of Moria for the tokens. And we don't need to worry about legendary creatures, guys. Remember, the ring, when it tempts you, it makes one of your creatures legendary, so it's actually very easy to get one. Okay, so next we are going to look at what I call the power lands. These are powerful lands that we're going to play in our deck. They're going to include Field of the Dead. We're playing a lot of uniquely named lands. And then we're going to play Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. That is just, if you're playing black, it's a really good combo with Cabal Coffers to give us a huge mana boost and a lot of mana. Moving forward, we'll go to utility lands. These are pretty self-explanatory. Takenuma is actually a very useful card. It puts stuff in our graveyard, and it gives us a way to return one of our legendary creatures or planeswalkers, which we are playing. Also, Reliquary Tower is just an auto-include. You don't want to discard down to hand size. That always feels bad. And then Bojuka Bog, because this best land in the game. Okay, hands down, fight me in the comments. It's a great land. And then also, for utility lands, we have Command Beacon and Ancient Tomb. Ancient Tomb is just, it's a little bit of mana burst, and it got reprinted, so it's a lot cheaper right now, so it's actually a really good time to pick it up. Now, next, I'm just going to go over through a Grixis mana base. I'm not going to stop and explain every card. You guys should understand what fetch lands, check lands, and all that kind of stuff is. I'm just going to show you what I included in my deck. Also, side note, the fetch lands that I do play in this deck, I only play the 3. I like the colors to match when I play. So, yeah, it's not optimal, but it's just like a pet peeve of mine. I like the colors to match in my mana base. So, anyways, other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory. Alright, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of our deck. We are going to go through our Planeswalkers that we play. We do play 2. And they're pretty self-explanatory. So we are playing Liliana Dreadhorde General. We are playing an Aristocrat strategy. This card does everything we want to do. It gives us a way to sacrifice creatures. Gives us a way to draw cards when our creatures die, and it also makes bodies, and its ultimate is really deadly, but rarely will you ever get to an ultimate with Liliana. Narset as well, Parter of Veils. This card is just kind of an auto-include when you play CDH. There's a lot of Ristic Studies and just explosive storm decks out there. It's just a very useful card for shutting off a lot of card draw, and it can be really rude, especially when you play a lot of wheels. So I always love to include Narset whenever I play blue. And she's pretty useful for helping us find some things in a bind when we need to find a removal spell or anything like that. And she draws a lot of aggro and attention, so sometimes that's one of the good things about playing Planeswalkers. So going into our creatures, this is really where stuff starts. So Blood Artist, we are playing an Aristocrat deck. It is going to help us ping. I have Braids as well. Braids is super useful in Commander because usually you'll be drawing 3 cards. Now if you sacrifice a creature, maybe you're not always going to draw 3 cards, which is what you normally would sacrifice with her, but there are times when you will sacrifice your land to get 3 cards. Super useful, especially when you're draining your opponent as well. Braids can be super sweet, and I definitely think it's a little sleeper. Dockside Extortionist, because if you're playing red and you're not playing Dockside, then you're not playing your deck right. This card got reprinted not too long ago. It got a little cheaper. It's still an insanely expensive card, but it is worth picking up because until they ban it, this card is probably going to be in Commander for the rest of eternity. It is a very good card, and it's kind of self-explanatory. Rarely have I ever played this card and been disappointed. I do play a Fleshbag Marauder. A really good card for triggering some sacrifice effects around the table, and you'll see later we play some enchantments like Grave Pact, where it starts getting a little chain reaction and it becomes pretty explosive. We also have a Grey Merchant, great way to gain life, and again, if you're playing enchantments like Grave Pact or Dictate of Erebos, you have a lot of black mana pips on the board, you are going to gain a lot of life, and sometimes it can flat out just win the game. So I love Grey Merchant in my Aristocrat style decks, especially when I'm playing a lot of black cards. And then I have Mahidi Emporium Master. This card is, I haven't seen it around too much, and I kind of put it in because I wanted to test it out a little bit. So it is going to generate us some treasures on our turn, and I think that's about what we want to do. We want to be able to make some mana and be able to hold up spells on our opponent's turn, and making treasures is also more sacrifice fodder for our Mayhem Devil, which we are going to be playing. Mayhem Devil is just a really good card, especially because it's on any player. So fetch lands, things like that from our opponents is starting to ping them. Mayhem Devil is still a problem. It has been since it was printed, and definitely one of the sleeper cards in Rakdos, I think, in Commander. We do have a newer card, Mirkwood Bats. This card is super sweet. We are going to be sacrificing our tokens, and we're going to be making tokens, so we're talking a lot of drain here. And a 2/3 flying body. That's not bad. Flying is underrated in Commander. Sometimes you do need a flyer, so it can always be a blocker if you need it to, although I don't think you will be. Nightscape Familiar, we are playing Grixis. Nightscape is just kind of always an auto-include in Grixis decks. And it is useful for us here. It also has Regenerate, which is pretty useful, but rarely do I see people regenerate a Nightscape Familiar, but it's still a super sweet card to play in Grixis. The Orcish Bowmasters. I'm sure you guys have all seen this card. It's very good. It generates us tokens. It pings our opponent. I mean, it does a lot of good stuff, and it's only 2 mana with Flash. This card is insane. It is going to be an auto-include, I think, in just black decks, period. It's not Dockside Extortionist level of like game breaking, but it's very good, and I think it's definitely smart to pick up a copy in case you go into a shielded situation where now the card's like $80 and you don't want to pay that much for it, right? We do have a Playcrafter. We do need multiple flesh bag effects. The only thing about them is they hit tokens, which is a little unfortunate, but we do have a way around tokens, and we'll get to that later. But still, Playcrafter is super sweet because at least they can discard a card if they don't have a creature. Professional Facebreaker is a very good card, especially when you make a lot of tokens and you swing. Definitely going to get some treasures, and we have ways to make treasures, so it can turn into card advantage in the late game. I really think Professional Facebreaker is another underrated card, super sweet. We have Razakath of Foul-Blooded, just a very good Aristocrat card. It is a sacrifice, it's a sacrifice enabler while also being a tutor. So it's just a super sweet card, and again, Grey Merchant is going to love this guy. Now we are playing one of the Shieldreds from March of the Machine with the True Scriptures. That enchantment is very good. I've played Shieldred in a couple of my decks, and she has never just not been good. The fact that she doesn't hit tokens is very good. It's just a really good card. I actually really like the new Shieldred, and I think she's pretty cheap for what she does, especially seeing as she has a Dark Realms ability on the back end of her enchantment, which, I mean, Dark Realms used to be a very expensive card. It might still be, but I really like the new Shieldred. I'm also playing the Shieldred Whispering one. because I did want to make, I didn't want to keep like too far into the aristocrat thing. We are leaning heavily into it, but I also wanted to make sure I'm that arch enemy. Shieldred is one of those praetors that just you need to answer it. It's really annoying. No one likes sacrificing their creature every upkeep, and especially the fact that you can keep reanimating creatures is always really good. So I love that one. And then here we have the big bad of the deck, Shieldred the Apocalypse. That's right, we're playing all 3 Shieldreds. Shieldred the Apocalypse, I mean, what is there to say about this card? It's insane. It has a insanely good body for the rate. The death touch on it, I mean, like punishing card draw and rewarding your card draw is so good, especially when the ring tempts us and we draw 4 cards. We're gaining 8 life. That is so good. The Shieldred the Apocalypse is just a good card. I think if you're not playing her in black, you're probably not playing her because she's so expensive. Like, that's the only reason I could think to not play this card. It's just that good. Sir Conrad the Grim, another one that doesn't see a lot of play. Very good in aristocrat decks, and it's actually pretty good at shutting off some of your opponent's graveyard decks as well. So I actually really like Sir Conrad a lot, and it kind of shuts him off because it pings him a lot. Turgid. So I put Turgid in here as a red herring. We do have some flesh bag marauder style stuff in our deck, which is always useful with Turgid. But Turgid is a kill on sight commander. People are very terrified of it. So sometimes it's a good 5 mana, make your opponents nervous, have them play out their cards, or get scared and hold cards back and buy you some time. And sometimes if you just play Turgid and you actually do have a flesh bag marauder and you get 3 creatures, or you play Playcrafter, you get 2 creatures and you get a land your opponent discarded. So again, a really good card. Viscera Seer, this is a sacrifice outlet. It's probably one of the best ones in the game next to Carrion Feeder. It's just super useful being able to scry 1 and sacrifice at any time, and sacrifice itself, which is also really good. So I do play the Witch King of Agmar. I really want to test this card out and see how good it is. And of course we are playing Sauron, so of course we have to play some Witch Kings, you know? So whenever it deals combat, whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt damage to you this turn, and then the ring tempts us. So a creature deals damage to us, it gets sacrificed. So if it's indestructible, bye Talski, and then you draw 4 cards, right? You discard maybe 2 cards, draw 4. Yeah, that sounds really good to me, and the fact that we can discard a card and make it indestructible is also just useful. I mean, it protects itself. Zulaport Cutthroat, same reason we're playing Blood Artist. It's a pinger, it's a way for us to gain life, which we're going to need in this deck, because you are going to find that we have quite a few cards that make us pay life. Here's where we go into our artifacts. So for the artifacts for this deck, we do play quite a bit of ramp. This is where Grixis gets most of its ramp from. But we do play a couple combo pieces, and I think the first one we'll go over is Aether Flux Reservoir. Yes, Bolas's Citadel is going to be here, and so is Sensei's Top. We are going to play that combo. It is just a really easy combo to fit into just any deck. It's still not that expensive to play, and both those cards, even if you don't have the combo, each card is useful, so I think there's no real reason not to play them. I love Aether Flux. It's a good way to gain life, especially with how much pay life we have in this deck. We are going to need to gain life, so I love that card. Next we have Altar of Dementia. So our Orc tokens can get very big, especially if the Orcus Bowmaster's on the battlefield, even if they're not. Every time an opponent's playing a spell, we're getting a bigger body. So Altar of Dementia is a super sweet way, a sack outlet, to either mill us at times, although we're not really going to want to mill ourselves very much, but very useful to mill our opponents. We have Altar of the Brood. Here's why we have Altar of the Brood. If we have a sack outlet for all our orcs, not only are we going to be milling our opponent by 1, but we're also going to be milling them again with our Altar of Dementia. So Altar of the Brood just makes sense because we have the potential to generate a lot of permanents in a turn. Next we have Arcane Signet. Really good ramp ever since it's been printed. It's an auto including commander decks. Bolas's Citadel, again, really useful card with the combo of Aether Flux goes far and Sensei's Top. Again, if we have a bunch of life, we're going to be playing a bunch of spells for free. Even if we don't have Aether Flux Reservoir, we can chain off quite a bit with just Sensei's Top with this. So this card's been around. It's been in a lot of EDH, so I'm sure you're familiar with it. And if you're not, well, let me know and I'll make a video about it. And next we have Commander Sphere. I just wanted to play more ramp. I think Commander Sphere is pretty good. Being able to sacrifice it and draw a card is pretty useful. And, you know, it's just a mana rock. Dimir Signet, again, a very good mana rock. It's for 2 mana, so we can play it a little earlier. I do have Mana Vault on here. Mana Vault has gone down in price quite a bit, and I still think people need to pick up Mana Vault. It is $40. It's not a cheap card. It's still not a cheap card, but this card used to be around $100. So it's a good time to get a Mana Vault and make sure you don't miss out when it goes back up to $100 eventually, right? You need to get a copy of this card. It's super good, and you can play in just about any deck. Next we have Mind Stone, Commander staple. It's 2 mana, ramp yourself, and then it also turns into card draw. Next we have Phyrexian Altar, so we can turn our tokens into mana as well, which is going to be super useful. The Phyrexian Altar, the reason why we have this instead of Ashnod's Altar is we need a way to get colored mana because we are playing so many, we're playing a lot of like devotion style cards. We're playing a lot of pips in our mana, right? So when you're playing a Grave Pact, you're going to need to have 4 black mana in a Grixis mana base, which doesn't always happen. So Phyrexian Altar is kind of a mana fixer while also potentially being a combo piece. And then here's the big bad artifact that I put in. It is Portal to Phyrexia. I think this card is super good, especially if you have Turgid out. You know, playing Turgid into Portal to Phyrexia is a game ender, especially if your opponents have decent boards and scary creatures. Portal is very good at just, it plays into our mill plan with Altar Dementia. It is removal. And then sometimes it's just, like, even if they have just a few creatures, the fact that you're threatening to reanimate stuff every turn is just gross. I mean, you could just chain Fleshbag Marauders if you wanted to using this card and just keep stealing stuff. So, really good. Rakdos Signet, just a good mana rock. Again, we're going to play as many mana rocks as we can. Relic of Sauron, kind of have to include this in your deck. I mean, it is a very good mana rock, and it also has the name of our commander in it, so thematically it fits. And again, a good card. Just draw 2, discard a card in the late game is always great. Sensei's Top, good card on its own. Kind of rearrange your top cards in your deck. Make sure you're drawing what you need to. It can protect itself, and it's also a combo piece. So really good card. Sol Ring, it's been here since the beginning. It is just an amazing card, and yeah, everyone loves Sol Ring. I'm sure they do, well, unless it's being played against you on turn 1. And then we are playing all 3 talismans: Talisman of Creativity, Talisman of Dominance, and Talisman of Indulgence. Just really good mana rocks, and they deal a damage to us, but we do play a fair amount of life gain to help us out. So I think they're pretty useful. And now no Sauron deck is complete without the One Ring. So we do play the One Ring. This card is incredible. It's indestructible. It gives you protection from everything, and for 1 turn, but still, that's just, I mean, that's crazy. That's so good. And then also you're looking at a lot of card draw, which with Shieldred we love card draw, and we don't care so much about the pinging. We also have Thought Vessel. We do plan on our hand being full, and if it's not, then it's going to be full because the ring's going to tempt us, and we're going to fill our hand. So it's an auto include in Commander. Next, we're going to go into our instants and sorceries for the deck. We're going to start off with Bedevil. I think Bedevil is a very good removal spell if you're in the Grixis colors. Just being able to hit artifacts, planeswalkers, and creatures is just, it's good. It's a little bit better than a Terminate, but at the same time, it also can hit artifacts and planeswalkers. Next, we have Counterspell. It is important. We only play 1. But I think it's important that you always play at least 1 counterspell. Just remember, you always need to keep in mind that you're only playing 1 counterspell, so don't throw it off for something, you know, dumb like a ramp spell. Make sure that you save this as like a way to stop people from either interacting with your combo or your aristocrat, whatever you're doing. I would use it very protectively and I'd be very stingy. Now, I did say we're trying to be arch enemy, so we do play Cyclonic Rift. If there's a card that will get you hated at a table, it is this card. Cyclonic Rift is very good at making everyone angry and keeping you alive and winning the game. Man, this card is just, it is so brutal when you overload it at the end of your opponent's turn. It's just a good card. We are playing Dark Ritual. as a little bit of a mana boost. Sometimes Dark Ritual turn 1 into a mana rock, or 2 it's what you need. It's, you know, it's all you need. Or it gets you up enough mana to play your commander and things like that a little early, which is always useful. Sheoldred's Edict, for the price of this card and how easily obtainable it is, I think it's a great card. It's very selective, it gets around tokens, it hits Planeswalkers, it's only 2 mana, it's instant speed, sacrifice. It's just a good card. Like, this beats Sudden Edict, I think. I don't think it's Sudden Edict, I can't remember. There's a split second Edict. I actually think this card beats that out. Just the fact that it can hit Planeswalkers and can get around tokens is just, it's very good. Blasphemous Act, we're playing red. This is one of the best board wipes in the format. A 1 mana, 13 damage board wipe is just, it's always good. And when it's not good, well, probably nothing else is beating out that creature anyways. So I love Blasphemous Act. It is just a great card. Diabolic Intent, we're making a lot of tokens. We should have some good cards to go along with sacrificing them. So I put in Diabolic Intent over Vampiric Tutor or Demonic Tutor, just because, well, because we can, really, because I think Diabolic Intent is actually better in our deck than Demonic Tutor. Well, it's not better than Demonic Tutor, but it's basically the same thing for us, and we have creatures readily available for it, so it's just a cheaper card, and I think it's a no-brainer in the deck. Try to keep the deck a little low. It's not a cheap deck. This is not a cheap deck by any means, but and if you do want to run Vampiric Tutor, you absolutely can. But I still think the card's really good, and it goes along with our theme. It sacrifices a creature, and it can trigger some stuff for us, which is what we need. I also have Faithless Looting. Sometimes we need to discard that 7 mana Sheoldred, you know, and get things in our graveyard. And it's just a really good card for hitting our land drops and giving us things to do and kind of filtering out those bad cards, which our deck has none of course. Feed the Swarm. We do need a way to get rid of enchantments, and Grixis is historically pretty weak to enchantments. And we're not going to play a card like Invoke Despair in this deck, so we're definitely going to be playing a Feed the Swarm. It's just a really good answer to just about anything your opponent plays. Well, creature or enchantment they play. And we don't care about the life loss because, again, we're playing a good amount of lifelink. Life gain. Jessica's Will. Another auto-including commander. You're going to see this card a lot. It's just very strong for what it does. 3 mana, makes 7 mana, and exile the top 3 when you have your commander. It does a lot. It does a little bit of everything for you. And I mean, there's been a couple of times that I've played Jessica's Will after someone's, you know, drawn like at least 14 cards, and I've Jessica Willed and made 15 mana on a turn, and then you just kind of storm off. So it's just an auto include. Reanimate. They recently reprinted this card, so it's a little bit cheaper now. Reanimate is always good because you don't have to be a Reanimator deck to get value out of this card. It can hit anyone's graveyard, so it's just, on rate, the card does a little bit of everything. It can bring back an important creature for us, or it can steal a really, really nasty creature from our opponent's graveyard before they can. Bastion of Remembrance. Oh, sorry. Next, we're going to go into enchantments. Bastion of Remembrance. So this is a way for us to gain life. It's a pinger basically on an enchantment for us. It also gives us a creature, which is useful. Call the Ring. We're going to try this one out. We want the ring to tempt us, because if we ever get empty-handed, we love to draw 4 cards. And it also is card draw for us, and it's on its own. Dark Prophecy. We are sacrificing creatures a lot, and we don't care about the 1 life. And it also helps us with our Grey Merchant. Dictate of Erebos helps us with the Grey Merchant, and it makes our Fleshbag Marauders a lot more useful. And the fact that we can sacrifice our orcs at any time, our orc armies at any time, clear the board, we can keep the board clear. People are going to be scared to play their spells, basically, because it's giving us a token that if we have a sack outlet on, we can just start clearing their board. Dread Horde Invasion, because Bitter Blossom is expensive card, and we really just want it so that we can sacrifice creatures. We're not swinging in with a bunch of fairies, so we're fine with just making some zombies that eventually, you know, once it gets to 6 power, could gain us life, but most of the time we're just going to be sacking it as a 1/1. Grave Pact, again, it helps our Gray Merchant, but also on its own, it's another card like Dictate of Erebos, where it's going to help us keep those boards clear against those token strategies, those gold-wise strategies. We're going to be able to get people to sacrifice more of their creatures. It's how an aristocrat deck works. We're going to be pinging people, sacrificing these little token creatures, and just blowing up everyone's board. So it's very cruel. I've had it where I've had Grave Pact and Dictate out, and I play a Flesh Bag, and you sweep up 3 creatures, which, I mean, what more could you want, right? And again, we're arch enemies, so we're going to be playing Rhystic Study. Everyone hates this card. We want people to hate us. That's the point of playing Sauron. So we are playing a Rhystic Study in the deck. Know your opponents, draw a bunch of cards. It's a really good card. We are going to try a new card as well, and our final card, which is going to be Spiteful Banditry. So it can be a board wipe, but it also is going to generate us treasure tokens, which Professional Facebreaker will turn into cards in the late game. But I wanted to try it out. It fits with Sauron as well on a theme. But yeah, so basically it is a board wipe, and it generates us tokens, which is super useful for us, especially when we have a Grave Pact effect on the battlefield. We can sack a creature and then have our opponents all sacrifice a creature, generate a little bit of treasure tokens on their turns because they're playing spells and generating orc armies with our Sauron. So that is the deck list. Thank you guys for letting me ramble on for a little bit and kind of go over my Sauron deck list. It isn't the usual gameplay video, but I did kind of go over my plans for Sauron. I'm really excited for them. And it's not the most optimal build, but I definitely think this is probably the more correct way to play him, because you do want to be that arch enemy at the table and kind of just put people under your thumb, like I said earlier. And if you have a deck or a card that you want me to go over in a video, just leave it down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, guys.